E incógnita do colégio, voltamos, porra! Voltamos, caralho! Bora continuar assistindo. Mas primeiramente... Nossa. Não dá, vai ter que ser assim. Cerveja.
Uploaded this COVID PSA, and while the picture quality had significantly improved, the animation is as dogshit as it ever was. And then 2 years later, they uploaded a fully animated cover of Dream's song Mask as sung by the Yowie Rapist.
Just keep on crying when it's so terrifying, but I keep on smiling when I'm good.
And this genuinely great piece of Breaking Bad fan art, but their identity remains a secret. And most amazingly of all, they haven't broken character in the entire time. They even type in the early 2000s weeaboo style, complete with cow emoji and little sparkly things. The only truly dedicated full-time shit posters that we have these days are divisive people like Sam Hyde, Dan Henschel, and Norm Macdonald from Beyond the Grave. But it's just not quite the same. Whoever the artist truly is, their long-running shitpost that invariably makes everyone who looks at it the punchline of the joke has left a huge legacy. And the fact that they haven't broken character once makes it even funnier. And for that, we must be arigato-ful. This has been an art history lesson.
Jesus Cristo, porra!
Loja Santo Antônio, aqui tem de tudo para sua Páscoa, vem? Tem chocolates, recheios variados, formas incríveis.
Sofram! Sério, mas isso aqui vai ser horrível.
The Wear Diaper. Half man, half diaper. A DeviantArt urban legend you've probably never heard of. In 2012, one artist pushed the boundaries of human imagination, creating a work of fetish art so shocking it incited the collective rage of Reddit, 4chan, and the anti-Minion fandom. Twice, a work of art that sought to ask, what does it mean to be human? Where does clothing end and flesh begin? And most pressingly, what would happen if a guy could turn into a diaper? This is the story of a 2010s Reddit poop rage incident. This is the story of the Wear Diaper. Today's art history lesson: DeviantArt, 4chan, and why we can't have nice things. On August 30th, 2012, DeviantArt user Kitsurol penned the short story A Full Moon Curse Awakening. Wear Diaper TF. And while I'm giving you these events chronologically, please keep in mind that the beginning of the timeline is very fuzzy for reasons you'll soon see. The story itself, though difficult to understand on a first read, is the brief account of a man undergoing a werewolf-style transformation under a full moon in which he turns into a diaper. A wear diaper, if you will. And you need to keep two things in mind. The first is that the word TF in the title refers to transformation, a relatively common subgenre in the DeviantArt community, focused on characters, humans, or animals turning into all manner of things. Second, Kitsurol claims that this story was loosely based on a drawing that was actually created after the story's publication, but the artist who drew the image insists that it was their original idea. And this discrepancy will come up again. But the real action begins on September 14th, mere weeks later, when Fur Affinity user Eva Kitty Jonesy 91, who we'll just call Jonesy, uploaded an unusual curse, Wear Diaper TF. And before we can go any further, let's have a serious look at this artwork as accompanied by a reading of the short story. In the middle of the night, Chris awaited the full moon, bracing himself for the changes soon to commence. Suddenly, his hand began to shift from flesh and blood to plastic fibers. The changes continued as Chris's legs merged and changed, his body shrinking as more became soft and absorbent. His body began to flatten as his bones changed, his head merging with his body as he folded, and his humanity faded away as a crescent mark appeared. In Chris's place, a diaper remained, enchanted with a second effect that would take hold should another person find it. One night, Allison and Andrew opens the door. "There you are! I've been looking for you," said Allison to the diaper. Allison picks the diaper up. "Ew," said Allison and Andrew, coughing on the stinky baby, and the fur begins to change and transformed into a skunk, and Andrew morphed into a trash bag with dumped trash waste. And past this point, the story is pretty difficult to parse. There's something about a man turning into poop, about stink lines, and about garbage, and then it ends shortly thereafter. So there's a lot to discuss here. Firstly, writing quality aside, this is a pretty standard piece of fetish transformation material from the 2010s. Stylistically, it has a classic airbrushed look with a little bit of anime influence, along with an abundance of tags that make it clear that this was meant for an adult audience. The transformation sequence itself is very standard. A generic self-insert character looking distressed but doing little to stop the slow and awkward transition into an inanimate object. Second, to return to this weird discrepancy, there is a bizarre gap between the upload dates. Sadly, the original DeviantArt post has not been archived, meaning that until we can determine a first upload date, the originator of the wear diaper will remain a mystery. And third, we have to address the diaper thing. But as always, 4chan did it for us. January 2013. Poll. One January day, for no reason at all, a 4chan user posed the question, "What about wear diapers?" and attached the following screenshot. Users on the thread wasted no time in showcasing their shock and disgust, with one even voicing concern that after seeing this image, he may never feel clean again. And to explain their reaction, let's remember the time and place. For those who don't know, Poll, or Politically Incorrect, is by far the most popular and most active 4chan board. And despite the name, it's largely a shitposting board with only the faintest pretense of politics. And while it's not 100% clear that the original 4chan compilation screenshot came from the Poll board, reverse image search results point in that direction. But sadly for Jonesy, no board on 4chan would have been any kinder to him, and the ridicule was overwhelming. Between 2013 and 2014, the slow but relentless tide of mocking reposts on 4chan, Reddit, and Meme Center relentlessly attacked the artist and the art. And remember that pre-2016 Reddit bears basically no resemblance to the Reddit of today. It was a lot more oriented towards cringe and cruelty and a lot more loosely moderated. But after 2 years of online torment, it seemed that things were finally looking up. By winter 2014, the roasts and 4chan reposts had slowed to a crawl. Jonesy had long since deleted the offending DeviantArt post, continuously uploaded new artwork in its stead, and it seemed that the hate had finally settled down. And then the Minions movie happened.
Vai de Nescafé gelado. Abriu, misturou, refrescou. Nescafé, faça seu mundo.
Though it pains me to bring up what is probably a very unpleasant memory for many of you, let's quickly touch on the Minion craze of 2015. And I promise this is related to the diaper fetish. As part of a gargantuan marketing strategy to promote the Minions spin-off movie, everyone and their mother had a brand integration with Minions that year. McDonald's, Chiquita Banana, a Super Bowl spot. It was a devastating year for Minion haters. But the goodwill of people who were merely Minion curious was rapidly being burned up by the total saturation of ads. And the straw that broke the camel's back were Minion Facebook memes. In a tragic turn of events, alcoholic mothers across the world discovered that they could talk to like-minded women on Facebook via the Minion. I roll in
I love math.
or worse.
Damn!
Broke out of Facebook containment via ironic reposts to Reddit and Twitter. But irony wasn't enough, and before long, the Minion hate subreddit was alive and thriving. And all of that brings us to this Minion meme from July 1st of 2015, simply captioned, "Every day we stray further from God's light." The overdramatic sentiment really struck a chord with people who were sick to death of seeing Minion memes, and the phrase soon found widespread use wherever a cringy image existed. And just when Jonesy thought he was finally clear of the crosshairs of 4chan and Reddit, a Redditor thought it would be funny to re-upload his artwork to the Cringe Anarchy subreddit with the title, Every day, we stray further from God's light. With no hesitation whatsoever, a second wave of detractors became radicalized by the wear diaper image, and a second harassment campaign was soon underway. Though Cringe Anarchy was an increasingly edgy, right-wing cringe subreddit whose time on the platform was quickly running out, in 2015, it wasn't yet going anywhere. And poor Jonesy didn't stand a chance. Now, you may see all of this and think, okay, well, obviously the mockery and the hateful comments are completely unnecessary. But can you really blame people for reacting poorly to such a bizarre fetish? Because it's not like anyone is actually into diaper transformation. That's it, that's the end of the video. This fetish isn't real, bye. So put very simply, inanimate object transformation is a very common interest in the adult art community. DeviantArt and Fur Affinity, along with many related sites, contain thousands and thousands of images of characters undergoing transformations. As far as the spicy aspect goes, the appeal of this fetish for many people is the idea of powerlessness and surrendering their body to an overwhelming force. It's definitely more abstract than a lot of other which opens it to a lot of artistic interpretation. And since it's not usually explicit and it doesn't break any rules, it gets posted constantly. But the diaper thing is dicier. Diaper fetishism can certainly exist on its own, but a lot of the time it comes packaged with ABDL, Adult Baby Diaper Lover. ABDLs are no stranger to controversy due to the extremely sensitive nature of their kink. They're a very poorly understood community who, unsurprisingly, often fields accusations of While some engage in this lifestyle for purely physical purposes, many others use it as a way to safely age regress and revisit aspects of their childhood in a controlled environment. It doesn't seem that Jonesy nor Kitsurole have any interest in ABDL, and instead focus on the diaper as a source of humiliation. And this isn't shocking whatsoever, as humiliating transformations and disfigurement are a thriving subgenre of this fetish. The short stories focus on smelling bad, on being laughed at, and being thrown in the trash are common components of a humiliation fantasy. And as any psychologist can tell you, paraphilias, which is the academic term for this stuff, tend to cluster, especially as they get more extreme. So if you've ever been on DeviantArt and noticed that a lot of artwork depicts inflation and feet and furry and humiliation and transformation in the same image, that's typically why. And though humiliation isn't the craziest aspect of this type of art by far, it definitely fills the gaps when it comes to explaining transformation art that seems just a little bit too bizarre to be real. So does being into humiliation mean that Kitsurole and Jonesy in any way invited or enjoyed being flamed on the internet for 3 continuous years? Almost certainly not. And for the most part, they've maintained low profiles. It remains unclear whether the story or the artwork came first, nor whose idea it originally was. And I've not been able to get in touch with either artist in order to find out. The short story marked the final post on any of Kitsurole's accounts in the last 12 years. And as for Jonesy, they continue to upload their transformation art to multiple websites. Thankfully, without harassment. Though it looks like they've taken down the diaper post on DeviantArt years ago, the original Fur Affinity upload remains to this day. And one can only imagine the mental fortitude required to survive 2 4chan character assassinations and keep posting. Jonesy's artwork, though unusual to some, ultimately didn't cause anyone any harm, though he bore the terrible luck of having what was probably personal artwork reposted and mocked relentlessly. He seems to have emerged unscathed, and he even recently acquired some fan art. And frankly, it's heartening to know that he didn't let the trolls get to him, because Pole, much like the wear diaper that started it all, is full of shit. This has been an art history lesson. This is the story of a 2010s Reddit poop rage incident. This is the story of a 2010s Reddit poop rage. A wear diaper, if you will.
Existe fazer você mesmo e existe...
The time a Chicago labor union posted fat furry porn to its official Facebook page, igniting a Nazi communist furry furry war. In January of 2020, this Facebook page inexplicably posted furry fan art in support of workers' rights. But this was no ordinary colorful fan art, because this was furry porn. And in no time at all, this post would go absolutely viral, forcing the labor union to answer a very uncomfortable question. Did they know? The answer is gonna floor you. But before we can get there, because of the huge overlap of communists and furries within this community, this was not your ordinary furry porn. This was made for a higher cause. Because this furry porn was made to fight the Nazis. Today's art history lesson, fat furry fetish art and the battle against fascism. On January 27, 2020, the Greater Chicago Industrial Workers of the World Facebook page posted this furry art with the caption, "The best cure for a case of the Mondays is one big union." It depicts a morbidly obese skunk with the IWW logo crushing a stereotypically rich fox-type creature underneath its massive fupa. While it may not be obvious to you, this is furry porn, and it's called fat fur to be specific. According to Wikiver, fat fur is a subcategory of feederism fetish art, which focuses on weight gain and helplessness and just generally being fat. Not to be confused with inflation, which is strictly about becoming huge, but not fat, due to being filled with air. Very important distinction. And you'd be forgiven for conflating the two, because these are some of the most popular genres of furry fetish art since the beginning of time. From DeviantArt to Fur Affinity to Twitter, this fetish subset is absolutely everywhere. And it's no surprise that in a political community disproportionately filled with furries, this would eventually breach containment. And that brings us to this post, because this fat fur fetish art was commissioned to clap back against the rise of alt-right furries within the community, and we'll get into exactly how that is. But first, a quick timeline. January 27th, the Facebook post. January 28th, Twitter user Space Drugs takes a screenshot and posts it with the question, "Is someone going to tell them?" Also January 28th, the Daily Dot publishes an article suggesting that the International Workers of the World official Facebook unknowingly posted furry art. And the IWW's response was absolutely goated. The IWW tweeted back, and I quote, "Unknowingly. Wikiface." This sent the furry community into an absolute tailspin. This was not oblivious boomer posting. This was malicious. Someone did this on purpose. Someone at the International Workers of the World knew what furries were, knew this was fetish art, knew people could tell, and hit send post. But who would possibly do this? We'll get there in a minute. Meanwhile, the community had erupted into furry on furry violence. On the one hand, you had people saying that this was funny, this was based, and it was good representation for their community. On the other, you had people complaining that this made it impossible for anyone to take furries seriously, and that it exposed a non-consenting audience to fetish art, which was a legitimate complaint, and also that it potentially reinforced the beliefs of Nazi furs. But let's be real for a second. How serious was the Nazi furry problem? It actually was. Furries are a massively diverse group of people with dissenting opinions in politics, and where you have a hyper-accepting group, you often get snakes in the grass. Nazi furries do exist as an extreme minority, but some of the best-known furry convention scandals of the last 10 years have been tied back to Nazi furry trolling. However, one thing almost any furry can agree on is their love of furry art. So what better way to clap back at the furry Nazi chuds than in a language they understand? Remember, you can start out irony poisoned, but sooner or later that cognitive dissonance will kick in, and you'll find yourself Sieg-heiling in a hot, sweaty fursuit outside a DMV. So the furry community had cause for concern. This was potentially a PR nightmare. Normal people simply did not understand this stuff, and the International Workers of the World Twitter was no small account. It was followed by Bernie Sanders, and dozens of furries in the replies voiced their dissent, understandably worried about how the workers' rights community would look at this. But it was about to get much worse, or better, depending on your side of the aisle, because the IWW doubled down. January 29th, 2 days after the original post, the fighting was at a fever pitch, and a smaller account affiliated with the IWW made things even worse by tweeting the following: "If you run a business or make a living from commissions making fursuits, you have a place in Textile and Leather Workers Industrial Union 410. And in case anyone was still unsure of the position on the furry question overall, the original Facebook poster who started it all had this to say: "We believe that when workers come together as a unit, they can overpower their bosses. We originally took the meaning of the image to be in reference to this principle. While we have no official affiliation with the furry community, We appreciate that furry workers hold the same values of worker power and welcome them in our union the same as any other worker. So did they know? Yes. Did they care? Absolutely not. Does this art actually fight Nazis for real? The answer is genuinely really interesting because there's a huge missing component of the story that we're not talking about. Who actually drew this? And how does it relate to bashing the fash? A tragically overlooked part of the story is that the original artist was never given any credit because no one has been able to track them down. But I think I have a pretty good lead. If you look closely, this illustration was signed Eileen 2019. And after searching through Fur Affinity and Twitter, I found an account belonging to one Eileen Samoyed. While I'm not 100% certain this is her and I haven't been able to contact to ask, the art style and subject matter are freakishly similar, like down to even the exact same finish. Though I haven't been able to find this particular commission anywhere in this artist's works. And I want to state for the record that if this isn't the actual artist, if this is the kind of art you enjoy, please show her your support.
Work today is broken. We're all working in too many disconnected apps, and it's killing team productivity. But for the first time, there's a platform that fixes it by combining everything you need. Project management, team chat, and knowledge sharing in one place. And it's all powered by the world's most complete work AI, so you can find answers instantly.
Now, as for the Nazi thing, quick history lesson. In Weimar, Germany, right before World War II, there was an explosion in the subversive art scene. And as Nazis rose to power, they made an effort to distinguish between good culture and degeneracy. And you may notice this rhetoric if you're ever on alt-right Twitter. Tons of what we might understand as modern art was destroyed in degenerate art purges. It was burned, it was torn apart, and the artists were typically persecuted. So how does this relate to fat, furry fetish art? Well, whether it was the artist's intention or not, the choice to create a very uncomfortable viewing experience for an average person, combined with featuring a body type often considered unattractive, follows the subversive tradition of bucking against the wider culture. So in a really roundabout way, this artist did kind of stick it to the Nazis of old. But back to the present day. This shitpost doesn't seem to have affected the international workers of the world or any of their social media in any lasting way. While the offending tweet was since deleted, which was probably the right move, its impact can still be felt in the tons of tweets and Tumblr threads that it left behind documenting this explosive phenomenon. And as for the person who commissioned the art, we know who that is. Kinda. The Daily Dot article profiles the anonymous user Jay using a pseudonym, and he explains his thought process. I see far-right furries involving politics and laugh my ass off, so I thought it'd be funny to do it for politics me and my friends actually like. Most of the fandom leans fairly left-wing, and I felt like people might get a laugh out of it. I didn't really expect the image to spread as far as it did. But as quickly as fat fur fetishists are willing to spread their legs and their wallets, so too did this image spread across Twitter for several unforgettable days. And while this would quickly be overshadowed by the other big news event of early 2020, it was memorable nonetheless. And at the end of it all, to quote Jay, it was just really funny. This has been an art history lesson.
Eu até vi qual é aquele vídeo pro celular, mas não, é o cara que tem fetiche em pão! Acabou.
Vai de Nescafé gelado. Abriu, misturou, refrescou. Nescafé, faça seu mundo.
The cursed Sonic Shadow toilet art with no known origin. For the last 10 years, this mysterious illustration has been endlessly reposted on Twitter and Reddit, a staple of the bad Sonic fan art genre. Few could resist the appeal.
levada do Lars Ulrich.
Of the anthropomorphic Sonic toilet. But the more you investigate this image, the weirder it gets. Endless dead links, a bizarre image board whose existence has been wiped from the surface web, and one of the longest, strangest, most unexplainable games of telephone on the internet. Who drew this? Where did they go? And why are they so determined never to be found? This is the never-ending rabbit hole of the Skibbity Sonic toilet. Today's art history mystery, fur affinity, fluids, and how to fall off the face of the earth. In case you've never seen it, this is a rather infamous piece of Sonic fan art, featuring Sonic and Shadow the Hedgehog merged into a single, fleshy, toilet entity. Shadow can be seen voicing his disapproval of the situation, and just out of frame looms the fat gut of a character coming to use the bathroom. And remember the gut, because it is very important. So, for obvious reasons, this image persisted in people's memory. And right off the bat, there's a weird inconsistency. Because since this image's earliest known origin of Halloween of 2013, the version that's been posted and reposted ad nauseum is actually cropped. The left section of the image is often cut out entirely. And when you plug it into reverse image search, something weird happens. The earliest result goes nowhere. Fools.us is a defunct site with broken formatting. No matter, old forums die off and fail to archive all the time. But you start pulling the thread and you realize there are tons of dead links. And strangely enough, this image did not originate from DeviantArt, Fur Affinity, or even E621. And if you don't know what that is, we'll get there. But there's another lead, iChan.org. Several links come back to iChan, but once you start looking them up, it's another dead end. There is zero trace of iChan anywhere online other than this dead Twitter account and this little mushroom icon. But we can use context clues. Chan boards are infamously filled with adult content, and their insular nature makes them difficult to find. Based on the content of the image, we can make an educated guess about the kind of board it appeared on, and we can safely assume that it's legit fetish art, which does narrow things down. But finally, a break in the case. A reverse image result from November 29th, 2013 leads to cheeseburger.com, which leads to something awful. 2014. The earliest available version of this image is from a thread by user Andrew Garbage Day Miller listing the strangest fan art around. The early 2010s were very much the beginning of the larger cringe movement that would come to define the latter half of the decade, at least online. And there was truly something about the Sonic franchise that produced the strangest art you'd ever seen. The snowball effect truly began on February 13th of 2014, with this BuzzFeed listicle about bad Sonic art. Merely weeks later, it was reposted to College Humor, a massive website at the time. This image quickly became the poster child for terrible Sonic content. Between 2014 and 2017, this spread like wildfire. Anywhere you saw bad Sonic art, you saw this. This drawing was relentlessly posted to Reddit, to Twitter, to Imgur, but never with an artist attribution. And one thing you need to understand about weird fetishy art like this is that the artist is often easy to find. So back to something awful. Right under the post, it says that it was created for the thread by one Friends Are Evil. So there we go. Mystery solved, right? This horrifying visage was created in 2013, it blew up in 2014, and sure enough, here was our guy. But something didn't feel quite right to me, so I reached out to Friends Are Evil, and lo and behold, he says this. I didn't actually do that Sonic Shadow toilet drawing. I think Something Awful's formatting is a little confusing, so it might have read as mine. I did do this original drawing for the fan art thread ages ago. I definitely saw the Shadow Sonic toilet image circulating the thread around the time I was frequenting the thread in 2011 to 2012. So, nothing is adding up. The image has no clear origin. It was never posted on any of the usual suspects. And upon reflection, at the very top of the Something Awful thread is an attribution to an artist simply named Call Now. And Call Now is an absolutely untraceable entity. There is no social media or art website profile matching this name. It's basically unsearchable. Okay, pseudonym. Happens all the time, especially for very objectionable adult artwork. From here, things start getting really strange. The BuzzFeed article was one of the last prominent examples of the full version of the image being circulated, because after that point, it was almost exclusively this version instead. And it may not seem like a big deal, but removing the fat belly from this image removes a massive piece of fetish context. And we have to talk about the fetish. But before we get there, there's something really important you need to know. Out there on the internet is a website that Coomers could only dream of developing. A website with an exhaustive catalog of every fetish that has ever existed. A website I hoped I would never have to consult. the Blue Furry site. So if you don't
E bom, se acabaram os patches, eu acho que esse aí foi meu último. Não, tem esse aqui ainda. E esse aqui, tem dois ainda. Eu vou ver onde eu coloco esses aí.
know, E621 is a staple of the furry adult art community. And while Sonic isn't strictly furry, the character designs are right on the cusp, and I had a good feeling that I was going to get a lead. So I made an account and plugged in the following search terms: Sonic, toilet, and transformation. And once you disable the pee-pee poo-poo filters, there it is, attributed to one Fizz the Ancient. So this time it had to be the artist, right? Because this website is meticulous about tagging and cataloging. But one look at the artist's gallery, censored for your peace of mind, and it's immediately obvious that this is not their work. In fact, it only has their name on it because of a mix-up with an old Tumblr post. So artist misattribution once, a mistake. Twice, whoever made this did not want to be found. Because even on the Blue Furry site, this drawing got a tremendous amount of downvotes. And you might be thinking, surely the people who frequent the site have seen it all. What is so bad about this one in particular?
What the hell? Oh my God, no way.
So let's quickly address the Anthro Hedgehog in the room. Why is Sonic fan art so weird? I'm gonna be so real, I don't know. But I have a game theory. Sonic is a very child-oriented franchise that people tend to cling on to in their adulthood as a source of comfort. It also tends to be the cringier fanbase due to its origins in 90s ratitude and failure to adapt to modern sensibilities. And historically, it's produced a lot of edgy OCs. And there's also a famous mismatch between the seriousness with which it handles its subject matter versus the execution. Now, the furry community is similarly deeply misunderstood and often a refuge for online artists, incredibly welcoming to people with marginal interests as well as fringe fetishes and adult content. So the Venn diagram of people interested in Sonic, digital art, and furry culture converges in a huge way. And as a result, you get tons of fan art that leans into increasingly niche interests. And as you approach the extremes, you get some really, really, really freaky art. And speaking of freaky, let's define exactly what fetishes we're discussing here. On the surface, this may just look like hee-hee funny Sonic, but I promise you, this type of fan art hits a lot of fetish cross-sections. Furry, feet, diapers, and transformation. And while most of these are self-explanatory, there is one that requires a closer look. Transformation, agalmatophilia, or TF, is relatively common within the furry community, and that's not shocking given the transcendent nature of wanting to inhabit a non-human body. Its earliest furry web presence can be traced back to the 1997 site Transfer. And the closest to a formal definition I could find is from this incredible 2012 article by, I shit you not, professional British gaming researcher Dr. Mark Griffiths. He describes it as a form of sexual fetishism in which an individual derives sexual arousal from descriptions about and depictions of transformations, usually of people being transformed into other beings or objects. He continues, I also read that the transformations are typically non-consensual, with the transformer often becoming confused, scared, or angry as the changes take place. And knowing all of that, this image suddenly becomes much easier to explain. But we still haven't answered the question of who the hell made this. And by this point, I was losing hope. 2 artist dead ends. Every version of the image led back to some other version in an endless game of telephone. And frankly, I was freaking out because at the time that I found artist number 1, I was sure that I had solved a decade-long mystery, and I even tweeted about it. And now, I had nothing to back it up. And the story could end right there. Were it not for the fact that there was one more famous piece of Sonic toilet transformation art in the exact same style. And this one, I was determined to find. So back to square one. DeviantArt was a complete bust. A potential link to Wizard-chan's depression board turned up nothing. And checking the file names of individual images was useless because many of them were named 2ce.png, the file name from the image on the Know Your Meme page. We were going in circles. So with determination in my heart, I returned to the Blue Furry site and typed in the following: Sonic, toilet, transformation, pee-pee. And sure enough, there was one image strikingly similar to the Sonic toilet. Sonic Urinal Heroes. We were so back. And to make a serious comparison here, both images are arranged the same way. On the left, an anonymous character with a large gut, which is why I brought it up before, looms over the transformation victims on the right. Both are set in a bathroom. Both use a relatively muted color palette. The line weight, the thin white highlights, the subject matter, the composition, the looks of distress. Even the way Shadow and Knuckles' eyes are rendered is remarkably similar. And if that wasn't enough, this image was posted on May 31st of 2013, mere months before the first archive sighting of the Shadow toilet. So who is our culprit? While I cannot claim beyond the shadow of a doubt that this is our guy, this break in the case was illustrated by a furry fetish artist going by the name Canada. Their galleries on Fur Affinity and Ink Bunny contain dozens and dozens of images of the Sonic crew in adult situations, including toilet transformation. For obvious reasons, I cannot show most of these on screen, and while it's important to credit an artist with their work, please be aware that these images are incredibly graphic and probably not worth having in your search history. So if you do seek them out, please be warned. Can we definitively say this is the artist? No. But the pieces all fit, and together, it's a hell of a coincidence. Now, as for the present day, this image still gets reposted from time to time, notably the version without the gut, but it's far past its heyday. Sonic art continues to be as weird and marginal as ever, and those who seek images like this out are surely to find more. While it cannot be said with certainty that Canada is the originator of this long-running Sonic meme, they have certainly done their part to contribute to the culture. And as for whoever may truly be responsible, their sheer dedication to never being tracked down is really admirable. So has this internet art mystery been solved? I think it's as solved as it's ever gonna get. And if I wasn't unemployable before this video, my prospects now are circling the drain.
This guy stinks!
This has been an art history mystery.
Loja Santo Antônio, aqui tem de tudo para sua Páscoa, vem? Tem chocolates, recheios variados, formas incríveis, bicos de confeitar, embalagens, artigos de festas, utensílios, guloseimas e muito mais. Vem pra loja!
coisa. Vamos uma gameplay diferente. Só deixa eu fechar um negócio aqui. De aviões.